I'm Nancy Goins, and I'd like to welcome you to the Forest Park Chamber of Commerce. Finally, back a little bit in person. Hopefully, this is the first of many. We'll see if we can continue getting some in-person meetings together, as this year has been a little bit challenging to get that done. So I know that RCP is probably not going to meet in October. I got that message yesterday that some of the other chambers are not ready to commit to that. So we're working forward to do some other programming and see what we can accomplish. You know, as the numbers keep rising, I think people are getting a little more nervous. So, but we are so glad to be here today. And so I'd like to, up on the screen, we have our speakers' bios. Don Schwartzman has been a longtime member of the Forest Park Chamber of Commerce and is the president and CEO, is that right?
That's me.
That's of Enriching Spaces, and we are at their beautiful campus to discuss what they have done in getting their Wellbuilding certification and some other things that she would love to talk to us about and explain to us what is going on. And we also have Yasha Og, and he is here with, he's with Immersion Design, and he worked with Dawn and Enriching Spaces to get this building up. And he's got some other very exciting projects probably that you've all heard of. Immersion is a well-known design build firm here in Cincinnati that does a lot of national work. So it's one of our true gems in the area of town. So with that, I will let you take it away.
Terrific. Well, welcome. And this is our third, I think, event. It's been good to open up. Just a FYI, our entire team is vaccinated here, but we are adapting. If our customers want us to wear a mask, we will. We ask if people are not vaccinated that they do wear a mask, and it's been going extremely well. We're trying to distance, using boxed lunches, and thinking about everything we can do to reduce contact. Forest Park was so instrumental in helping us meet the criteria of well building. It was an immense challenge, and we'll talk about that in a while, but we are the first in Ohio, the 9th in the nation to become well building certified. And recently we also achieved our health safety rating, which you might see on TV. Look for the health safety rating, which is we'll talk a little bit about that. And joining Cincinnati 2030 district and our mission for sustainability, health, safety, and well-being. And that's what we'll share with you today. Just an FYI, there's a restroom straight back here. There's one at the top of the stairs, and there's some more in the office area. If you require a restroom, emergency exit is right behind you. Halfway up the stairs is another emergency exit. And when you're upstairs, you'll see various doorways for emergency exit if need be. Forest Park has helped us define all of that. It's not necessary to be well certified to take advantage of the knowledge and the experience that Yasha and I are going to share with you today. That's a good thing because it's an arduous, somewhat expensive process to go through. So we hope that you'll enjoy the information that we're sharing and that you'll find some of it's even really beneficial for your residents as well. Alrighty, you ready? So we spend about 90% of our time indoors, and thus our environment becomes one of the largest determinants of our overall health and safety. You can see this little pie chart here where the physical environment is the majority of it. Then we have lifestyle, genetics, and medical care. So what we do to influence that indoor environment is huge influence, and often it goes to the bottom of the pile when it comes to thinking about health and wellness. Our health begins at home and at work in all of those spaces we experience on a daily basis. Is everyone able to hear me? Okay, good. Yash is going to explain a little bit about how well evolved from LEED and the differences.
Yeah, so I'm not used to holding this thing. So how many are familiar with LEED or the LEED program rating system? A couple of you? So LEED, or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, is a rating system standard that's centered around buildings, and it's really focused around how do I make my building more energy efficient, water efficient, how do I select better materials for my building that has high recycled content. It was started in the 1990s as a way to really push beyond basic building codes in order to kind of have buildings that are more sustainable and more environmentally conscious. While LEED is great from the energy and water and efficiency standpoint, it doesn't put us as people in the main focus of the program. And so our health has kind of gone a little to the wayside from the focus really around the energy and water efficiency. And this is not because LEED did this on purpose. It's more that there's a much easier to understand return on investment in energy and water savings than there is in occupant health. Well, on the other hand, they have launched this Wellbuilding program, which is really centered around us as people, knowing that the building is built around us. It's a way to protect us from the elements. And so knowing that we spend 90% of our time indoors, it's starting to look at, and that 75% of the built environment impacts our own health, it's looking at how can we make those environmental changes within our built environment to benefit our health, because we're the ones that are trying to live and prosper, and we occupy those buildings. And so the environment and how we live within that environment really impacts our own health. And so changing our work and our culture and what we eat all impacts how well we feel, how productive we are, how mentally fatigued or not fatigued we are, especially with like first responder. That's a big issue, or big requirement, is that we want you on your game and not sluggishly getting out of bed. Me personally, like I would like the fire department to show up. So understanding and creating our buildings that optimize our own health is critical. And this new wave of sustainability, as it's being called, is really gathering speed. The pandemic that we are currently experiencing really has brought health and wellness to the forefront of everyone's conversations. Discussions about air quality really were not a big topic to talk about, but now it's on the front of everyone's mind to start being engaged in.
Absolutely. We had no idea that this pandemic was coming, but how ironic that when it hit, we were getting ready to go through our testing, and we had improved our air quality, and we'll talk a little bit about that. 24/7 fresh air coming into 6 units through Move 13 filters, rebalancing the system was transformational. So know that you're sitting here in one of your first social meetings in a very well building.
So the Wellbuilding Standard is built around 10 main categories and concepts, and all of the different features or those strategies, there are about 110, I believe, in the standard. They are all backed by scientific research and data from the medical science or medical industry, from science research papers, and as well as coordinating with facility managers and understanding those environmental impacts from the built environment. So all of this data and all of this information and research over 10 years was combined in order to create this Wellbuilding Standard So everything rooted in it is based on physical evidence and data and experience. And so they cover everything from air quality through community impact. And they're built around, is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So obviously we need air to breathe to live. After that we need water, and after that we need food. So those are the main three big categories because we need that to survive. And then from there it keeps going further up Maslow's category of needs until we get to community, which is that feeling of being surrounded by our community. And so if you're asking like why well, Don's going to talk about it from a building owner as well as from a business owner, but from a sustainability and health and wellness aspect, where the LEAD program looks at, like I said, energy and water efficiency, it's really focused around this 1% for energy as well as the 9% for like operations and rent. And this was from a Jones Lang LaSalle study that looked at where do we spend our money from an organization standpoint, and how much is per square foot spent on what. So $3 a square foot essentially are spent on energy, about $30 a square foot is spent on rent and operations, and about $300 is spent on salaries and benefits and other things related to people. So where the LEAD program really focuses around this 10%, WELL focuses around the 90%, as well as then sort of into the operation. So WELL 99% of coverage, LEAD about 10. And then there's also a crossover between the LEAD program and the WELL program, just from similar categories and impacts that they cross over. So they're meant to be cohesive with each other. They're not meant to be conflicting against each other. Dawn.
All righty. So I'm fortunate enough to own the mortgage for this building. So I guess that makes me the building owner. And what I found with the improvements we made over a couple years is my property values really went up. In fact, I recently, this summer, did change banks and had a reappraisal, and it shocked me because what was sort of more warehousey or unfinished space became very livable space. And so property values for sure. Also outdoor beauty as well as indoor beauty really affects the appraisal too. That it just adds to that. And I think Wellbuilding, although we've been in Forest Park for years, this Wellbuilding process brought us closer to the city of Forest Park and all the services that are there. And Paul totally, and Don, everybody got on board really quickly and understood the concepts. And especially when it came to some of the things we'll talk about in community, our emergency plans with the fire department, the police department, and also just thinking about how can we be helping to drive wellness as a member of this community. Now, from a business owner's perspective, attraction and retention of employees is number 1, 2, and 3. And this is becoming one of the biggest issues. We just spoke to HCDC a couple weeks ago. This is so significant. Folks are making decisions about where they want to work based upon a lot of these factors that we're talking about today. That it's not just about a paycheck, and it is about a quality of life and a quality of health. The well-building knowledge is integrated into our entire culture here, and specifically, it also guides our decisions since we're in the business of designing workspaces for businesses and healthcare and universities, that we're going to select materials that meet well specifications, that aren't toxic, that meet social and environmental certifications. So interestingly enough, a lot of companies will provide like wellness programs but generally speaking, 15% of the employees actually take a part of this, a part in those programs. Well building affects everybody, whether you're raising your hand and signing up for the class or not. Everybody benefits.
You are all taking part in Dawn's wellness program.
Yes. So the project scope is up here, and I don't need to go. We're down in the lower level studio right now, and this is a very mobile space. The building was originally built in 1989. It was not ADA compliant, so we really took, except for the one little bit of warehouse space and this little patio out here, we really looked at the whole facility, introducing an ADA universal restroom on each floor, which was another big but important investment, because we see the trend moving from male and female restrooms to more universal restrooms in the future, and very family-oriented restrooms as well. We also, every single, except the 4 of the older units, didn't have any fresh air intakes at all, and we'll talk about that later, but it was shocking to me to understand that we were just moving around existing air. And the fact that we had a screen door upstairs and down here doesn't cut it for, especially when some days you can't have that door open. So that just gives you a little overview of the extensiveness of the project. And so I'm going to turn this to Yasha to just talk about air quality and all of the discoveries we had.
Yeah, so we had a lot of discoveries around air quality. We discovered that Dawn has 5 or 6 of these mechanical units. One of them is back there, which is the one that you hear every now and then kick on. And out of these 6 units, one of them was drawing in fresh air. And it was drawing in fresh air, but it wasn't necessarily going through a filter. So it was just pulling outdoor air.
Well, there was a filter. It's just
there a filter?
wimpy filter.
Okay, a wimpy filter. So it was drawing in fresh air, went through the wimpy filter, and then it was getting circulated throughout the building, and all the other mechanical units were just drawing in the indoor air and just recirculating it. So what we did is we actually punched more holes in the building, which, if you think about it from an energy standpoint, isn't that great, but from an occupant health and wellness standpoint, we even had one associate who was on maternity leave come back and was like, wow, like the air is not stagnant in here. So that was a testament to how impactful it was, because she wasn't even in the building while this all was being changed out. She really had a before and after experience.
And it was transformational within, I would say, 24 hours of us just totally moving to this. And a lot of you have experienced walking into a building, especially first thing in the morning or after a weekend, and it's just this, I would just say, stale air. And to just have that evaporate, because it's running through the weekend, it's running all the time, this fresh air intake.
Yeah, and the other thing that we did is we bought a fancy cool monitor that measures air quality from for both carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, as well as temperature and humidity. And so what we did with this monitor is we kind of set it around different places throughout the building just to understand where we averaging at. And for reference, when I came in this earlier today, this was said around 500 parts per million of carbon dioxide. So it's gone up just because we've all been in this space. And so moving this thing around, we were able to actually determine that over one weekend, everything just spiked completely. If you click on the picture. So everything just spiked. And we were wondering, well, why is it doing that? And we found out that Dawn's cleaning company came in and they did a deep clean carpet cleaning. And so because everything spiked, we had the background data to show them that, like, hey, the stuff you're using is not great from an air quality standpoint, and it's lingering in the building because you can see how long it takes to decline. how about we start looking at other alternatives to cleaning products? So it started a whole new discussion around cleaning products, which was great.
Yes.
The other part-
Well, interesting, the carpet extracting company, I've used them for years. I said, there is a little bit of fragrance. And they said, no, there isn't. And I said, there is. And I said, I want you to come in and do hot water, no fragrance, and try to eliminate that. But there's still the residues in a lot of building cleaning supplies have some kind of fragrance in it, which kind of covers up, actually. It gives you that new car smell, I guess. But
Yes, it's a good way to disguise and make it smell clean, is add something that smells clean to it. But the other part that this monitor does is that on this side over here on the right, we have the indoor air quality from this monitor right now, and then this over here is outside. So by understanding what the difference is between indoor and outdoor, when we go on our tour upstairs, Dawn has by the door to the outside, she has these little cue card things, which then can tell, like, okay, is it safe, not safe, safe's the wrong word. Is it okay to go outside and work from outside on the patio, or is there a reason why I shouldn't from an air quality standpoint? So today, it's moderate.
So today it's fine to go outside, but because of the humidity, inspectors will put a sign saying, but close the door instead of leaving the screen door open. It's just a simple way to say, close that door behind you today, or you can leave the screen door open.
Yeah, in case you were curious, it's 76% humidity outside.
And if it's over 60, you just want to shut the door.
Yeah.
So it's also, if we're watching pollen, what a difference it makes to just look at the pollen. I just look on my phone and say, oh, pollen counts are high, keep the sliding glass door shut today.
Yeah. And so the reason why this is important to understand is that the higher that CO2 level creeps, the more it starts impacting our cognitive functions. And from OSHA's standpoint, an okay air quality of CO2 is around 1,500 parts per million, which is really high. As you can see, we're less than half that. So, but at the same time, the higher that number creeps, especially once you start getting around 900, it does start to have cognitive effects, and it starts to impact our response times. So the more we can keep that in check and lower numbers, the better and more cognitively awake we are, and so the more productive we end up being.
One last point about the health part is the well building has really strict guidelines. No smoking, not only in the building, but on the property. And signage has to be throughout the entire facility and exterior. Which is hard when you have trades working, you know. They try to head out to their car for a cigarette break, and it's really hard to monitor that, but we're doing it.
Any questions around air? Nope. Okay.
On the handlers that you have and the filters, do you have anything like a plasma or UV or anything like that?
So we don't have a UV system in place, but we did upgrade the filtration system to be MERV 13 filters, just because they start to capture around 90% of the outdoor particulate matter coming in versus the, I think, MERV 8 that we had before, which capture about 50%.
And I just went ahead and ordered those on Amazon for my house too, to fill the MERV 13s.
And for reference, most commercial buildings have MERV 8 filters in their mechanical system. So in case you were curious, that captures about 50% of the particulates coming into the building. If you upgrade to the MERV 13, it captures about 90%.
So we'll move on to water. We had a water system from Quench that has UV, that does another layer of filtration, but Joshua will talk a little bit about what we explored. Cincinnati Waterworks came in and did a complimentary testing for us. There were several areas where we did pre-testing, like with the air monitor, so that we would not find ourselves vulnerable on testing day. We wanted to know what that data was before the official testers came in.
So we're in Cincinnati, which means that we get the combined sewer overflow from Pittsburgh, and Louisville gets ours, which Cincinnati Waterworks is actually one of the best water filtration companies in the country in order to provide us with good quality drinking water. What we did is we looked at what the reports from Cincinnati Waterworks of what is the water quality as it leaves the facility, and then normally, like, we don't know what happens in between. That's kind of what happened up in Flint, Michigan, is that the pipes were just bad. And so what we wanted to know also was, like, okay, it's great when it leaves Cincinnati Waterworks. What is it when it arrives at Dawn's front door? And then from there, Dawn invited Cincinnati Waterworks to come in, test her water on site, because they do it for residential units. So we just asked, can you come to my commercial
We
space?
were their first corporate customer to ask for this service.
Yeah.
So they were interested in learning more about well too, and what the requirements were.
Yeah, and so from there, it looked like we were relatively good shape for water quality. So we didn't end up going through the extra step of even more in-depth water testing. We waited until the performance testing agent came out, and they then took water samples and sent it off to the lab. And what we found out was that they only would do the testing samples from the actual drinking water. So not the sinks from the bathroom or the sinks from the kitchen, but from the bevy or quench units that she has for the drinking water.
So some other parts of water were having clear education on hand washing. You'll notice at every sink there's directions on hand washing. Also a Legionella management program, which is very low risk in a facility like this, but we went ahead and did it as well. And one of the most important things was start to educate our team about plastics migration. So avoiding bottled waters, bottled drinks as much as we can, and educating folks on how plastics are migrating into the food we eat, into the beverages we drink, was a big part of that as well. So Nourishment was one of the most challenging areas, because as a company we had to take responsibility for any food that was on our counter provided by the company. And even today with the Panera catering, Carrie did a good job. Panera is one of the few restaurants that lists the ingredients on their website, so it's on the back of the placards, gives full descriptions. You understand with, what those ingredients are, and for us to be sensitive to several diets. But anything that we provide also is scrutinized for no trans fats and calories, the amount of sugar. That's why your soft drinks are in small cans, because that keeps us at the accepted limit of sugar in a serving. So it's not that our folks can't eat whatever they want. They can, but if the company's providing it and we're providing it, we're going to be very mindful of the recommendations for Nourishment. And so you'll see upstairs in the kitchen, even in candy, there's a description of, we picked candies that were the best and treats that were the best. Protein bars can be really confusing, and when you get to study them, you understand that there are distinct differences, and you can have preferences.
Light impacts us a lot, and we don't necessarily recognize that how much of an impact light has on us. So our biology works that we are tied with how the sun's light works, so that's called circadian lighting, or circadian rhythm, which is our sleep-wake cycle. And so from there, the sunlight outside has a specific nanometer range of light blue light in it, which starts to impact, our eyes pick up that light blue nanometer range, and that suppresses our melatonin, which then wakes us up. So if you ever are outside like all day long, I tend to always be more tired at the end of being outside all day long, and even if I don't do anything, I feel more tired. And that's purposely because of how that light impacts us. LED lighting inside buildings, they don't have this specific nanometer range of blue light in it, so we constantly are feeling as in a sort of twilight zone of, am I awake, am I not? And our body doesn't really know which way we're doing it or which way we're going, if we're going waking up or going to sleep. And so what that impacts us is that we are then less alert again, because our body is trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. And so when you came in upstairs, you saw that Dawn has these nice big skylights in her space, as well as the big windows out to the garden area. And so what that allows her occupants to have is much more of that natural daylight flooding into the building, which means that they are then getting that sleep-wake cycle nanometer blue range light into their system. So then hopefully when they are at home in the evening, they have a better sleep at night. So we then also went through the process of actually looking at what are the light levels in the building, and we do this also not just for daylight, but also how much artificial electric light do we have on our surfaces, so that can we actually visually see what we need to see on desks or on the floor and stuff. So we went around with a light meter with one of our vendor consultants, and it was late at night, like 9 o'clock, and looking at light meter or light foot candles that were hitting the surfaces of pretty much
That
everywhere.
really validated that if you were working at night or a different shift, that without the daylight, you still had good lighting in the space to do your work and be efficient. We really studied coloration of lighting and energy of lighting, but I found one of the most significant things we did was try to offer adjustment of lighting wherever we could. It's very interesting when you have a team of folks. Some people just like to go into conference room and have all the lights off and just their screen. Other folks, like our controller, she likes to blast everything up to bright. So figuring out, allowing for dimmers, allowing for adjustment, and allowing people to move around the facility and work in different places. Maybe somebody wants to work in a place where the sunlight is flowing in the morning, or it can have such an impact. So choice of where you're working and ability to adjust the lighting, as well as the task lighting addition. So movement, I love this one. So you see a picture right in the studio. We had to, during COVID, we had to stop, but just a couple months ago, we did start up our yoga every other week on a Friday morning. And I would say our yoga is much less calisthenic. It's more about relaxation and getting out the stress out of your body. And that has been a really well appreciated movement attribute. As well, how do we encourage movement throughout the day? We're very lucky to be in the business where everybody can have a sit-to-stand workstation, because that's what we do, is optimize the ergonomics in a workstation, but also encouraging movement by having a walking path that goes around the entire building. And so folks can just go out and be in nature for a while, or if they want to get steps in, they can do 4 laps around the building and have their little recorder on. In the winter, they discovered that if they start upstairs and walk down here and do laps around here and back upstairs and down, just however you can get that little bit of movement in today's work life to alleviate the back strain and from sitting and computer work is a benefit. So encouraging micro breaks throughout the day can make a real difference for people's sort of the quality of their day. So thermal comfort maybe sounds like it should be air, but it is really completely different. And Yasha, you want to talk about that a little bit?
How many of you are hot or cold right now? Which one? Which one's hot? You're hot. See? So you're half and half. So as you can see, thermal comfort is extremely complicated. So we try to go for the average. And the other part that we did is, because some people are cold, some people are hot, we also explored, and fortunately we got approval from Well, and I heard from another Well project that they are doing the same thing. That
Oh, look where we started.
Right, that they are providing company-provided blankets to their employees as a way to take into meetings to wrap themselves around it with a blanket if they're cold, or have a little mini desk fan if they're
Yeah,
hot.
those little fans that we issue.
Yeah, and so the reason for this is because, as my question just pointed out, no one is comfortable, and everyone's slightly different because of our bodies and our physiology. So this one was just interesting to see, like, how can we actually work with what's required from the Well program, as well as how can we start a little bit of a culture change to be able to explore bringing in personal thermal comfort devices into meetings and being sort of having that, it's a culture change more than anything else.
It
Having
really
that,
requires just granting permission
Yeah.
to say, bring your blanket to the conference room. I mean, and so we will have people kind of fanning themselves sometimes, or just people, as you see Julia sitting there with her blanket around her. It's making it culturally okay for you to have a wrap or a blanket with you. And what a difference it makes, especially we're all women. We're a women-owned company, and the diversity in two women is huge. Again, giving choice in the workspace, having the fan, or being able to move to different parts of the building that you might find more comfortable, or by vote for the particular area you're working in. People will just say, does it feel a little cold in here today? And vote to take the thermostat. We don't lock the thermostats because they're zoned. So it might just be the sun is coming in one part of the building pretty strong. Let's go ahead and make it a little cooler in here to mitigate that. So again, choice and individual control makes a big difference.
Or space heaters in there now?
space heaters from a sustainability standpoint are usually a no-no. One, because they're just energy hogs. And two, I'm sure from a fire standpoint, they are a no-no because they are most likely to burn up, especially with like dust and everything, which a well-designed building shouldn't have dust, but we all know that's not always true. So we try not to.
We do issue blankets that are big enough to cover your feet too.
From an acoustic standpoint or sound, and really this is more about noise versus acoustics, we did some preliminary sound testing. And so this gentleman here, he did our preliminary testing. And what we tested for was reverberation, as well as how much does the ambient sound, like when that thing kicks on, you can definitely hear how loud it is. How loud is it compared to mostly upstairs in the work environment to what we want to control or have lower from a decibel range. And what was interesting that both neither Don nor I knew about how you test reverberation time is really just by blowing up a balloon and popping it, and then seeing how long does it take for it to reduce a certain amount by a certain amount of time. And so this guy nearly passed out on us several times when he was blowing up those balloons, but it was really interesting that that was the tried and true tested method on how to do those tests. And sure enough, when our official performance tester came, he also blew up balloons and popped them. One of the things that we discovered in our preliminary testing is that this space down here has a lot more reverberation. As you can hear, there's more of that echo happening. Whereas upstairs, we don't have that because we have a lot more furniture, we have a lot more soft materials
And
around.
our high ceiling is perfed. And
We have a perforated high ceiling.
so this is still
this
a
is
work in
hard.
progress, but since it was not the primary workspace, it didn't affect our score in a negative way. So we're still evolving in terms of how can we use baffles and exploring other options for this space down here. Basically upstairs, just our HVAC and our music tend to give a nice background sound that we actually prefer over buzzing in white noise. It's comfortable and it feels more like a coffee shop where you actually, studies have been said that sometimes people, they can concentrate better at Starbucks than they can in a space that's so quiet you can hear a pin drop. Those are the kind of spaces that any sound or any conversation you're hearing. When you have some background sound, you're not picking up on that exact dialogue that's happening. So materials, and I'll keep us going here because we had started a little late, but I want to cover everything for you. Materials section was actually, once we started this adventure, we just said, let's go for it. And you could go for silver, gold, platinum. And we said, let's go for platinum. We're overachievers. Let's get into this program. Once we started looking at materials, I just went like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And oops. I started looking for a well AP, somebody local who could help me and understood what we were dealing with. And somebody referred me to Yasha, and I contacted him and said, how would you like to work on our project? And it was such a blessing because I didn't understand the vocabulary. It was all new to us. And we work with materials every day, but understanding VOCs, understanding that there's also just the chemistry, not only of making fabrics and carpet and so forth, but transportation costs and manufacturing costs, and even the social, is there child labor involved with this fabric? You know, just the whole realm of things to consider. And it ultimately led us to creating a mindful materials library upstairs. But so everything in our facility, we had to document all the data on the materials. And two other areas that were a little bit difficult, the insecticides and pest control. ACE did a great job. They have a tier 3 list, and instead of just spraying randomly, you know, certain quarters of the year, now we just do targeted pest control. We're having this problem in this area, and we're also just using traps and other non-toxic devices. The cleaning service was a whole other thing. My cleaning service has been with me forever. I love them. They're like family. But they feather dusters, and they had their favorite cleaning products, and it all had to go out. And that transfer to microfibers and to new kinds of cleaning products was, it was hard for them at first. Now they're totally on board, and they actually use those products for some of their other clients. And
that started out of that conversation with the air quality and our monitor being able to point out that the products that they're using are leaving air pollutants in the air. And so I think that helped a lot with starting that discussion with them.
Mm-hmm. And with each of these vendors, explaining to them what we were trying to do with Well, to kind of engage them, sort of like Disney. Everybody who worked in building Disney understood the whole picture. By helping them understand what we were going for and how they could be a critical part of it really made a difference. So because of this work, and you'll see it upstairs, we created what we call our Mindful Materials Library. We culled through all of our products, and in our primary library, they have to meet various certifications. We have our old library down in the lower level of the warehouse. Still, architects and designers are going to specify products that don't meet our criteria. We suggest to them, can we offer you a substitution? And some of them the VA said, yes, show me, we matched fabrics and everything. But other architects and designers are still locked down on what products they want to use. And if it's coming out as a bid, we have to bid it as is. But we're making headway, don't you think? Immersion's one of the few firms. They inspired me, I would say.
Yeah. If you're an owner, I would encourage you to look into this and start requiring your architects for projects to select and specify better materials so that Dawn can do that. Now
we're passionate about it, annoyingly so to some people, just like you know. Is that a mindful material? So mind is also a more expansive category, but mental health is one of the big issues facing every business today and in everybody's life. So how can we support mental health and advise or support the resources for substance abuse and emotional well-being. So we have regular meetings and bring in resources and talk about stress and work together on a regular basis on how can we mitigate stress in our environment. Creating restorative spaces, having a view of nature, all of these are all critical factors in helping to mitigate stress. As we know, whether it's the mountains or the beach or wherever you go, it's getting back in touch with nature that often literally grounds us again. We have created a space for meditation, a power nap, and continue to educate our team on the mind. And this is sort of that whole category of well-being. You know, what constitutes well-being? And that could be a whole nother session. And this is the Forest Park page. You can see our Forest Park team. Can you see you in that picture? Taking us through CPR training. And we also had all kinds of emergency training from active shooter. And as a small company, we just had not done any of this. And also our tornado, our emergencies since then with the health safety rating, even contingency plans for a cyber attack. You know, what's going to happen minute 1, hour 1, day 2, if you have to move off site quickly. Really caused us to think about all those really significant things. And we'll be doing our CPR training again. We learned a lot, and we also have our own AED in the building. And we have great, in fact, the fire people were just here doing their inspection. You ran the first inspection with them too. Just really watching out for us to make sure our exit lights are working and so forth. How are we doing here? Pretty well. As when we tested, it was COVID. At the very end of COVID, it was delayed, so it didn't happen until July 4th. Our people were just starting to come back at the beginning of July, from March 12th or what that time period. And our tester came in, and we basically asked that everybody stay off site that day, just so there wouldn't be letting in. That was recommended to us, that there wouldn't be a lot of door opening or movement or somebody bringing in Skyline chili or whatever.
And so one of the big differences between the LEAD program, where it is a moment in time snapshot of documentation that you submit, they review it, and then they say yes or no and tell you what level you got. The WELL program takes it one step further beyond that third-party review of the documentation, and they actually require that someone comes out physically to your site and does performance testing. So this guy came through and he did air quality tests, he did water quality tests, he went around with his own light meter and looked at light levels. He took pictures of everything, and so they go through everything, and that we say, like, if we say that we are going to do this, they will come out and test it. And it's another way from an owner's side to really have that confidence that, like, okay, my architect who I hired and spent a bunch of money to do this, and then the contractor who built it, they actually met the requirements that I am expecting at the end of the day. And so I highly recommend, like, third-party on-site performance verification.
It was a little nerve-wracking, but
it is nerve-wracking for us.
Kind.
But
I mean, I was surprised that, they literally opened every kitchen drawer to make sure and to see that every snack or food item here met the nutritional requirements and had a little card or information with it. Looking in the cabinets, they like you to have moderate-sized plates and serving ware so that it doesn't encourage you to have an overflow
Yeah.
I guess, plate for lunch. It was really down to really interesting details that he was looking for. The task lighting in each workstation, the ergonomics, measuring the chairs, like, oh, does it go this, what's the height range? What's the tilt on it? Does it have adjustable arms? It really got to be, unfortunately, we had it all.
Yes. So I liked going through the process because then I understood, like, okay, they will come down and literally measure everything and verify everything. And
It was very educational.
I like it from even though I'm on the architecture side, like, I liked it that our own work is sort of being back-checked by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Dawn appreciates it because she now knows everything that she wants
It was
about her
very
building.
educational. And obviously we were holding our breath to hear, and we were very lucky then. Well, we weren't, we earned it, I mean, to get certified. But here's just a quick list of all the people that were involved, we feel, in the success of our project. You can see the Forest Park folks down below. Colorado, we'd have to do regular surveys. We have a survey team out from Colorado State. Some of our coaches, our vendors were all engaged with this. Herman Miller, OFS Brands, they're leading with this program as well. Ceiling people, carpet people, electricians, engineers, and so forth. It takes a village for sure. This is our most recent award. You'll see this on our front door. And you might see the celebrity ads on TV and around that says, look for the health safety rating. This is a bit more post-pandemic realities of taking cleanliness, cleaning protocols, and emergency preparedness up to the very next level. You really had to have very detailed action plans for each kind of emergency that left nothing in questions. So it's interesting even contacting our IT company and saying, we need to make a IT emergency plan. And they had all the guts of it, and now we have one. But emergency plan for what happens if something happens to me. I mean, it got to every particular situation and what would happen right away and so forth. So it feels good when you're all done with it. When you're in the middle of it, it's a little challenging. Yasha introduced me to 2030 District, so I got him involved here. And then I'll let Yasha talk about this because we are now an active partner in the Cincinnati 2030 District as well as a member of the 2030 District.
Has anyone heard of the 2030 District? Forest Park should raise their hands. Okay. So the Cincinnati 2030 District is the local Cincinnati district of a national model from the 2030 District, which is looking at the impacts of carbon emissions and trying to reduce the carbon emissions impact on our environment. And it's really looking at it through the lens of reducing our energy consumption, so saving money through energy, reducing our water consumption so that we just use less, and then also reducing our transportation emissions. And what we did here in Cincinnati is we actually launched a occupant health portion of those goals. And so Immersion was involved with the creation of the occupant of the 2030 District as a whole, but then also adding on this occupant health pillar to it. And so last month we finally published and launched the Occupant Health Guide, which looked at a combination of not only the community health needs assessment for our Cincinnati metro region area, which includes Forest Park, but then also looking at what are the main health concerns for Cincinnati and how do we tie those main health concerns to the physical built environment through 14 different strategies that will have the biggest impact. And then now we're trying to encourage our members to incorporate those strategies into their own buildings. So the goal is to reduce mostly chronic disease impacts from that building occupants have through these built-in strategies. I highly encourage you, if you're not a 2030 member, to explore it and learn more and possibly join. And So I brought in Dawn into this wonderful experience. And so she's already going to be, in November, we have a 2030 district green drinks event that's going to happen here, where we're going to talk about what those features are that Dawn has already met as part of this program as the glowing highlight case study for this 2030 district.
That should be fun. It's more of a cocktail hour kind
Yes.
of evening under the Green Umbrella family.
Yes.
Now we're submitting our water bills and our energy bills. That's as a member, and we're tracking so that we can at least reduce all those areas to meet the goals by 2030. When it comes to energy, we're there. I mean, for our square footage. When it comes to water, we are not there. And in doing the comparison, I realized, okay, all these companies downtown, they don't even have a lawn, and they don't have any irrigation. And I thought, it's not like we're playing volleyball or soccer out on this. I don't need that. And can we think, so I'm studying carbon-loving trees, pines, and just in my home this year, I took out all the lawn that I had and transferred it using chips and other kinds of landscaping materials, and trying to just isolate the irrigation in a more mindful way. So that it's just not watering everything, including the parking lot, which is what we have right now. So that'll be an exciting project that I'll keep you posted on. I've talked to Forest Park about it, and in Evendale, they do free chipping there and dump the chips on my property afterwards. I'm going to work with the Evendale chipping service and see what we can manage there and gradually transform this property. So it's going to be even more naturalized. One of the best things about being in Forest Park is that we actually have a forest, and it's just fun to continue to explore what we can do with it.
And just so you know, Forest Park is also a 2030 district member, so they will also be going through this process.
So any questions? I know that was an awful lot we jammed in, but I'm so happy that we got to share it with you today. And we'll take a little tour around as we'll start here in the studio. Let's take a look back here at our mother's room. It's very convenient to sink and then the restroom too. We've already had a couple mothers who were pumping and during those first few months of their back to work, and just kind of try to notice how everything in this space is movable. So one group we were expanded all the tables through the entire space, but the integration of nature is not only through the window, but in the colors and the textures and the way we design here at Enriching Spaces. Yes.
So do you believe that I know it's just started a little bit more, but employee retention, are you having good feedback from all of your employees? Do you think
That's a very good question. I will tell you that probably there's been a few employees who maybe totally didn't buy into the program. And at first. Now I think who's here is. And I do think for my two newest employees,
I already knew a little bit about Well, my friend is interior designer, so when I saw that was on her website, I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be a great place.
I didn't know anything about it, but I came from another community where we went to farmers market, and the idea of sustainability of design was something that was very attractive to me. I'm not a designer, I'm going to be the administrative coordinator here, but working for a company that holds that up as a value at this point in society, to me, was really important.
so that was my attraction. And I felt so good about it because, it's hard to, I'm going to continue being passionate about it, but there's a lot of skeptics out there. Let me just say there are and I think there's a lot of traditionalists who just say, hey, it was good enough for us. What's the deal with these young people? deal with this, or that. And so we're just carving our way. And I think corporate America is starting to pay more attention because they have to. And you're probably seeing, whether it's on LinkedIn or in just the programs you watch, finally the concern for the climate and our environment, and how much plastic we're putting into the ocean. We have companies that are now making carpet, collecting the plastic from the oceans, and all the different ways we have an impact. I tell the folks that are working here, every specification they write has some influence on the environment, and to just think about that very mindfully. So very good question, and I hope the trend is like where these two ladies are. Yes.
Well, if it's a question or just a comment, and then get your feedback. But yeah, I would iterate the same thing, that you just see, especially with COVID now, more companies are going hybrid. And so I can see that blessing and a curse where it's going to challenge companies for when their employees do come in. The workforce has made it very clear first that they don't want to come in 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So now the companies are more challenged at when employees are in the office, how do we make sure it's the best environment, right? So I think the ones on one side, they're going to be incented to attract, but at the same time, now we have this workforce living at home where you can't how do you incent wellness at home? Because most of the time the feedback is it's more around the social and community aspect, right? I don't want to be bothered by other people. I want to focus and work. Well, never mind that I'm working in my laundry room with my, computer lab, and whatever.
And the dog needs to go out now.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you transition this or put together some things that might be good for working at home too?
Well, this is our life every day. I'm sure yours too, because our customers range from DHL, Macy's, First Financial Bank. On a large scale, they still keep delaying their total comeback, although DHL was back. They're pretty much essential. And what is it going to look like when they come back? And what's really hard is if it is a hybrid, how does that work? It works for some employees better than others. What's fair? Then you get into the tax analysts. Okay, if you're going to be 2 days in Evendale and 3 days in Forest Park, who gets the payroll taxes? And and what is the space like? So we are continuing to adjust our space to support the way our team wants to work. And not just the team, but individuals to be sensitive to that. One thing Well is starting to really look into and prioritize too is how do we get more sensitive to neurodiversity, which includes autism, ADD, ADHD. There could be like so many environmental factors that affect these people, and there's guesstimates that 25% of the potential workforce they're dealing with this. And I know from my adult kids who are all successfully independently employed, they couldn't work in most of the corporate environments we have been putting in over the years. They can't work with that kind of lighting. They can't work in a square.
We do a lot of mission critical work. So we work with Department of Defense and all branches of the military, as well as first responders and fire departments, police departments.
It's tough.
So our clients usually have to be at work, like in the building, which is slightly different than an office environment where they can work from home or not. Where we're starting to see some changes is in a little bit in the education market on how do we have the ability to flex our classroom space to become larger or smaller depending on social distancing, as well as how many students are now in those spaces, and do we need to flex entire classrooms to become more classrooms or fewer classrooms. But for the most part, we are not seeing as much of an impact from the work from home thing because of the nature of our work that we do.
I think the jury's still out because a lot of them aren't back yet, but they're coming back, and we're actually renovating spaces for the return. So this will be an interesting evolution.
Another point to my comment is that it might be a critical turning point.
It is.
Companies are having a harder time attracting employees back to the office.
Absolutely.
And so some of these things you presented, which are fascinating, can help achieve that turning point.
Absolutely. Every day is an adventure, and all of the customers are kind of at different places. At first, it was a little bit of panic being in the office furnishings business, that everyone just decided they could work from home, and this is terrific. Fast forward 6 months and people stop thriving. Now, there's some folks that can work 5 days a week at home, but there were a lot of folks who are just like, I got to get out of the house. I miss my routine. I need to be away from the kids, whatever. There's a whole host of things, but the mentoring wasn't happening. The same kind of collaboration that happens sort of accidentally because you're just working with people, the kinds of conversations that don't happen over Zoom. They don't happen in the Teams meeting. So they're trying to identify that and figure out, so if you're in a hybrid situation, how do you create spaces then for that kind of work, and maybe the heads down work can be done at home. We'll see.
I do think it's interesting, and you guys do a lot of schools, I know, might not be your forte, but Immersion does, and school design has been more leaning towards this. Especially, Anthony Smith was going to be here for, the new Quinn Woods. It's got more lighting. It's more attractive for those future people coming. And the college market has been that way. And then when they graduate and they go into work in LQ, they're like, what's going on?
I'm not doing this, is what they're saying.
That's true. You think about the educational facilities have gone this far, a lot more into this than any of the corporations or even small businesses. Small businesses can probably adapt a little bit more to this.
Yes, that's
Some
true.
things,
That is
small
true.
businesses probably have an ability to do some of these things a little bit better than.
I feel very fortunate that I could affect that. So I recommend to people who are out looking for new space, once you know a little bit about Well and you're working with a realtor and a landlord, it's hard to convince an existing landlord, and you've already got a fixed lease, to make changes to the HVAC. So it's something to think about when you're moving or when you're changing or threatening to move.
If you want to learn more about sustainability stuff, there's a conference coming up on October 7th for, it's called Rebuild. It's going to be at the Sharonville Convention Center, and the theme this year is all about resiliency. So it's going to include things related to climate resiliency, economic resiliency, I believe, and then we have some exciting keynote speakers who are coming in as well to talk about that. So I'll be speaking there about community health needs assessment and how that health pillar got created, if you want to learn about that.
All right, well, let's take a quick hike around. I understand if some of you do need to bail. Everything here is sustainable. Our modular carpet is not even glued down. Every product that we use has a sustainable story. But this is just this little room we made for, and a lot of companies are trying to have a mother's room so that you can nurse, and we have then a sink and everything here. But then this is also a recliner that's necessary for the power nap. I had a gal going through chemotherapy, and sometimes just during the day, she'd just come down and want to take a 20-minute nap. So nap, meditation, mother's room. This is like a well universal restroom. There's child's changing table, handicap access. It's also for that individual user who really feels uncomfortable in a shared restroom, and every kind of family, which could be covers. So we have that downstairs as well. This is just one of our warehouse. We call it the warehouse. So you've seen a lot of projects. You see that we don't have windows here. We do have a little skylighting, but just by bringing nature into the graphics, into the materials, makes a big difference. Sometimes even just making your screensavers have nature images can make a big difference in the way the space feels. So you'll see in here. And you're also seeing all the furniture that we work with every day. Where we used to have more of an enclosed kitchen, we've gradually been opening it up. So one of the first areas that you go to is this hospitality area. Again, when this building was first built, there were offices all along and conference rooms all along this window side. Now we've opened it up so that the great majority can enjoy that view. And the seasons, so if there's a wild turkey out there or deer, we all can go running and enjoy that. So then our cafe, on both levels, we have our extra filtered drinking water that also serves for our coffee, our beverages. Everything has to be quantified for the amount of sugar in it. Everything is labeled. So there are chocolates in that are okay. And we try to have a healthy selection out. You know, somebody just is hungry and they haven't brought their lunch. Between a protein bar and a piece of fruit, it can kind of keep them going. We can take a step out here. Hi, ladies. So you can also work out here and downstairs with the Wi-Fi, and you can see how the walking path goes all the way through here, down and around. So everybody does have their own workspace during the day. It varies how often they're actually in their space or somewhere else in the building meeting or working independently. They really need heads down. They can go into a room or up there in the booth. We'll walk back through that. So the way we're designing today that's so different is that the collaborative areas are very close to the work area. So you can just hop over for a conversation, or say one of our reps comes in, we can just sit down and have a casual conversation. Longer conversations, we recommend people go a little more distant from the folks working. So, hey, Maria, do you want to demonstrate your table? Maria's one of our designers. And if she just is tired of sitting for a while, you can just raise up and stand. Thanks. It encourages movement during the day and just also keeps you from getting that strain. One thing you'll notice throughout the facility too is moving from table height to counter height to bar height. People are really enjoying just that variety in places to sit, and evokes a different kind of collaboration, sometimes less formal, a little bit like a picnic table. This is a favorite spot, obviously, because we get to really enjoy the view. In the well criteria, they're actually measuring feet from each workplace to make sure that they're within a certain amount of feet to a view of nature. And these two conference rooms now are also getting used as if somebody has to get on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, they can get in here quick and have a quiet background. This, again, the carpet is all glueless. It's interface carpet tile, all zero carbon, and we study a lot of that. It actually is adhered, the tiles are adhered to themselves with little sticky things so that we don't have to use glue. And that makes it easy if you have a damaged piece to just pull it up and replace it or clean it. And you'll notice the variety of lighting. Some of it's really helpful, I think, if you can bounce lighting up and have lighting coming down versus a lot of environments that's just fluorescent beating down on you. And it flows, it casts light and reduces some of the severe shadowing you have in some offices. Here's my office. And of course, everything is featuring products that we represent. But I even have a little view of nature out my window, but this is one of the favorite spots. We have our team meetings, and nice daylight coming in here, but all these products are fabrics, carpets, floorings that meet our certification. Right now we're getting ready. We're starting to work with the YWCA and bringing in samples for the meetings for that.
Are you doing any of the libraries?
We aren't right now, but we have in the past. Yeah.
You should do ours.
I would love to. I would love to. And even our laminates, we've screened and everything to use products that fit our criteria. So notice in this space too, because as you were talking about the changes in how we work, we're making sure practically everything is mobile. So the tables are mobile, these divider screens, this room could be totally opened up for a group. At the height of COVID, when we had to meet with customers because we're looking at finishes and get 6 feet apart and masked, we just had this all open and made that work. Here's this an area with Herman Miller, you'll see a lot of, this is off topic for Well, although the furniture is somewhat organic, for sure. Some of the classics from Ray and Charles Eames, the plywood chair, and that are part of the history of Herman Miller, are getting specified more today. There's been a resurgence in the interest in these kind of products. So there's a lot we can do when we're thinking about design, having translucence in glass. How do we put all those 10 features together to get a result that's compelling? And hopefully you're thinking, I would like to work here, right? Yasha, would you like to add anything more? We thank you for being such an attentive audience, and I hope you share our enthusiasm for this path that we're on. And
Yeah, thank you for coming out.
I look forward to seeing you in the future. We're just getting going. Thank you, everyone.